Cool. So, awesome. I appreciate it, big man.
Yeah, no
Um,
worries.
so right now, you are what currently, how far are you out? Like 10 weeks?
10 weeks out from Toronto Pro.
Toronto
So
Pro?
first one,
Cool.
and then I'll be doing the Vancouver Pro as well, which is another 4 weeks after that, I believe.
Gonna run the Canada shows.
Yeah.
Anything else after that? Any other plans for the season?
Yeah, I'd love to do Tampa as well.
Oh, nice.
So depending on obviously how Toronto, Vancouver go, continue on to Tampa. And the goal is to go to the Olympia. So I would continue on to do as many shows as necessary in
Nice.
order to qualify. So yeah, that is the goal. As last year, I wasn't able to do more than two shows. I did the two shows, then I had to stop just because my body was kind of not really letting me compete at that point. But
So you were planning on doing more originally last year?
I was because I've only ever been able to do, two a year is like my record. So, you know,
Is that because of the digestion issues, or is that just last year?
and you'll have to excuse me. I'm sorry. I'm getting over a little bit of a sinus infection, but last year it was mostly because of the colitis and also because I had a bicep tear. Probably one or the other could have been manageable, but both together just told me, okay, time to shut it down. And previous years, it was never really a goal to do more than, two shows. 2021, I only did one show, and then, doing two shows in 2023.
Is that
I
because you've
wanted to
been
do more
focusing
shows.
on still building, or you just don't want to overcompete?
Like, okay, yeah. So at this point, I feel like I get more improvement when I go through the prep phase, the off-season cycle that I've always kind of followed ever since I started competing, which was, 17 years old, did my first show. And then after that, more or less every year, I did another show. And I would go through that, 4 to 6 month off-season, 4 to 6 month prep phase, maybe a 4 month, detox, whatever. But I just kept following that formula. It was only a couple years, 2020 and 2022, that I actually didn't compete. Every other year since 2010, I've done a show. Oh, and except for 2015. But yeah, every other year I've done shows, but I've always wanted to be a guy who could do more shows. And
Yeah.
obviously get to the Olympia, the way that it is just, a lot of shows are stacked and a lot of guys are just getting better and the competition is very fierce. So to set myself up to have more opportunity, that's why I want to do more shows, because you just never know who's going to show up. But the way I see it is, if I'm ready to go, then I can show up and then I can win.
Yeah. Yeah, you never know. I mean, stuff happens. I think we've got what is it, the Arnold South America, right? And I think Carlos had to pull out, right? Like you never know. People pull out all the time, and people
Yeah.
miss the mark, you know. So, and are you concerned that? I mean, so last year you ended up first call, right? Did you get fourth? Was that right? In what show was that after New
Yeah.
York, right?
Yep. So New York, I got eighth. Toronto, I got fourth.
So Toronto. I mean, New York looked good too. I think like there were some issues in between those two times. Like from what I remember, you were just like shitting your brains out, right? Like you had all kinds of digestive issues, but between those two shows, and you were thinking about not competing. Is that right?
Yeah. So I'll run it back to the bicep tear happened at 6 weeks out.
And
I
how,
think
how
that
did that
was
happen?
so, honestly, it was really stupid. And thinking back, I was really embarrassed about it, how it happened. But there was a hack squat machine that was, on the mirror, and I just wanted to move it off the mirror. I just wasn't thinking, dude, I just pulled on it. And, I talked to my mentor after, and it's like, we're just used to pulling on things and moving them. This time I pulled on something and, it moved me, and I was like, fuck. And then I felt that little tweak, and I just kept trying to train around it. But the next week I was training and I did chest, and just during a pec fly, I just felt it tweak again. And I was like, damn, dude, like, okay, I gotta go and see somebody and see what's going on with this. So I went to go see Dr. Khan. He put me on the peptide therapy, and I was having to manage that. So then, around 3 weeks out, I started getting ulcerative colitis. But the thing that triggered it was that I had like a high carb day, and I went out and got something that was off the plan. It was recommended to me by my coach, but it was something that had like gluten in it, where I should have known better with stress, potentially being celiac from the beginning, but not really understanding what was going on with my body. All of a sudden I had a reaction to that. So leading up to it, and just to get into the detail a little bit, just so people can understand what's going on, is I was having diarrhea leading up to that happening. But I thought that was normal because my metabolism was so fast. I was just, eating food and just
Right
getting
up.
shredded and just coming right up. And that's sometimes what happens if you're eating a lot of fish or just fish and spinach and whatever, that might happen. So I didn't think that was abnormal, but it started to speed up and happen more frequently. Then once I had that trigger, that was maybe just the straw that broke the camel's back. That's when I had the reaction where then blood started coming out within that diarrhea, and I got super freaked out.
How
That's when
far? How's this was before the New York Pro?
this was like 2 or 3 weeks out from the New York Pro.
Okay.
That started, and basically at that point, it was like there was so much inflammation happening, then on top of that, I was trying to continue to take orals and things like this, and it got worse and worse. But I was able to somewhat manage it going into the show into New York, except the things that I didn't realize at the time, because previously I did a blood test to check out any allergies from the nutrition. So I did a blood analysis. It came back to me after New York Pro. Going to Toronto Pro, I took out a few things that I had an allergic response to. One was yeast, so that it kind of explained the gluten thing, but yeast was also in like a sugar-free ketchup I was using. Also eggs was on it, like super severe, and I was having eggs every morning, which every time I had eggs, I also had diarrhea, and I didn't put the two together because I was just thinking, oh, whatever. But
Were
it
you
all started to
experiencing
make
much
sense.
I'm sorry, were you experiencing much indigestion at all during this time too, or it was all just the diarrhea kind of issues, not much coming up through the mouth?
Nothing through the mouth, no, nothing like that. But when you have diarrhea, you're more likely to be dehydrated and things like that. It also got to the point where I would go to the gym and let's say I want to do some abs, and that would trigger it, or I would have basically, it was actually really scary at a certain point where I would just be drinking water in the kitchen and then I'd have to sprint to the bathroom, right? And that's when I was like, man, this is really serious. My wife started getting concerned. It was like a pretty big deal at the time. So, basically all that happened, but I was still able to manage it to a certain point because I just had in my mind that I wouldn't give up. I was just like, you know what? I'm just going to try to do this show. I just want to get there, man. At this point, like, I don't even care how I place. But taking out all the foods that I was allergic to, like all those things I mentioned, plus a few other things, mustard was on there. It's like all the bodybuilding things you wouldn't think of. But I took those out, and then my body actually did start to heal. And that's why I believe that I looked better for Toronto, because I was able to actually eat food. And even though I was still having all the symptoms, I was going to the bathroom all the time, like all day, all night. Wake up, go to the bathroom, go back to bed for an hour, back and forth. But I was doing my check-ins, and we were doing them every day at that point. And I kept waking up looking better, leaner, drier, and talking with my coach Dorian. He's like, he didn't tell me to stop. He was like, okay, let's just keep going, man. As long as you're getting better.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I held on to. I'm like, I'm looking better, drier. There's a chance here. Just have to make it the next week or two. Then I can try to like shut it down. So that's what I did, basically. Yeah.
You were shredded. Was that like one of your leanest ever? I mean, you were fucking diced.
Yeah. Well, I joke about it now. It's like, having the colitis, and I was already dehydrated. So it's pretty, right? It's pretty easy to peak for it.
I know. Are you worried? Are you worried at all if you're not like shitting your brains out? You might not
I
come
was
in
really
quite as
worried,
peeled.
dude.
I'm
Oh, I
saying, what
was
if the
really
next one?
scared. Yeah. I was really, really scared because so even my wife's mom, and she had some friends who do spiritual work, energy work, like Reiki and stuff.
Yeah.
So they came over to our hotel, and they were doing like Reiki just to try to get me to like settle
Fuck
my
anything at this
gut
point.
down.
Yeah.
Anything, yeah, whatever we could do. And it worked because I had like my morning meal, got to the stage, I had to use the washroom, all that, but nothing happened while I was on stage. Then I got off stage, ate a meal, went to the washroom. Then the only thing is I didn't want to eat again so close to finals. So I waited it out, and then I flattened out a little bit. But it was just managing the timing. It's like eat and washroom at the same time. That's pretty much all you
Yeah,
know.
you got to make sure it's
So
within a distance of you can get to it in time.
that's it. It's like calculating. I'm like, okay, well, the bathroom is like, it's kind of a far walk. Probably shouldn't go now.
Yeah, I mean, so many bodybuilders deal with these issues, right? You hear digestive stuff with so many people. I talked about it with Sergio. He said the same thing. Obviously, we mentioned Carlos. He's got issues. I mean, I hear about Justin Shire. Like, I'm really trying to figure out if there's some way we can avoid like just shitting blood at some point during prep, because it seems like for a lot of us, it's just inevitable. We start getting really bad digestive issues. Now, was that really just during prep? You don't have any issues during off season with that?
Yeah. So the thing is, going into the prep, I was just reading books, reading online. A lot of the stuff I found online was kind of bogus. The stuff that I was finding in books made more sense to me. So I kept diving into books. my again, my wife's mom, she had these books from the medical medium. I actually have it right here just because it's such a brilliant
Oh,
book.
nice.
But this is the
Cool.
one that I actually figured out how to cure it. Life-changing foods by medical medium. And I have open already just because I was reviewing this. Because this is a topic that comes up like pretty often. People are asking me, what did you do? And I'm like, and I took celery juice. And they, people, most people won't believe me because it's such a simple thing. It even says in here, most people will kind of write it off because it feels like it's too simple. And so they'll start adding like other types of juices to the celery juice. And that's not what you want to do. If you have ulcerative colitis, and it says right here, if you have any of the following conditionings, try to bring celery into your life. And it lists like a whole bunch. But then when I was reading this, what really got, the light bulb to click was it said right here, interstitial cystis, Crohn's disease, colitis, irritable bowel syndrome. I'm like, okay, this is what I need to do. And then looking into it more and more, it seemed to make sense. So all the writing that the medical medium has about celery, it's not even in the literature. It's just ahead of its time. But, again, you guys can go and read this book right here, Life Changing Foods by Medical Medium, because again, it's all right here. And then what I did was, as soon as I finished that show, because I didn't want to change anything at the time. There's too many things, too many variables to
Yeah.
start adding something new. I waited till the show was over. I bought like 5-10 bunches of celery, and then every morning I woke up and I juiced a full bunch of celery and I drank that. And it was absolutely incredible, man. Like when I say like I couldn't sleep because I was going to the bathroom every hour, like that was a nightmare. That was what kind of made me feel the worst out of everything. Because I was like, I just can't believe that I can't sleep. Anyways, after like 3-4 days, I went and had like a 4 hour sleep. And I like blew my mind. I made a video about it online on my YouTube channel. You can check it. I'm like, guys, I just slept for 4 hours straight. This is unbelievable. And then the next day I slept for 5. The next day I slept for 6, 7, 8, and I was back to normal. And
Nice.
then after that, whenever I feel like my gut is off, I'll just do some celery juice. And I haven't had that issue or flare up like that ever again. And I
So
hope
how
it
often
doesn't.
are you doing it right now?
Now I don't barely do it at all because
Yeah.
I've been like, again, like all the things that have been inflammatory leading up to it, like I mentioned, the orals, which are part of bodybuilding, and a lot of the foods that we might not even know we're allergic to. I try to stay away from those as much as possible. And then again, I have to feel my body. If you feel like I'm getting some bloating and not normal bloating, or I'm getting some diarrhea, or I'm getting some gas, or I'm getting some something, then I just have some celery juice in the morning and it goes away again. And again, it's all in here. It's not quote unquote science, but it really is like very scientific in terms of how the celery can heal your body. So again, I encourage people to read themselves, because I talked to Carlos, I talked to Justin Shire. Justin Shire, he did take my advice because he had a client who had colitis. They were going into a show and they couldn't figure out what was going on. I said, listen, if I had known this then, I would have probably just done the celery during my prep, because really, how is that going to harm you? Some
Yeah.
celery juice. It's like no calories, right? So he tried that with his client and it helped. I'm like, that's
Yeah.
another affirmation that it works,
Oh yeah. Well,
and
that's
I
kind
talked
of
to,
been like a hot thing for the last couple of years. I'm here in Southern Cal in Newport Beach, right? So it's like
yeah,
every new thing that's like healthy and good, like people will attempt. And I have had two different clients. They're both females. I had one client that had terrible digestive issues. She swears by celery juice, and I've heard it. I don't know why. I'm just like, oh, fuck. People say, but hearing a bodybuilder, like I'll definitely give it a shot. I've heard it some really great things from it too. So yeah, I think that's something that we should definitely consider. We're so quick to turn to a pill or some medicine or stuff. There's a lot of natural, healthy things we can do without having to pop a pill. Just get it from our nutrition for sure.
yeah. No, it's really cool. Like the medical medium, because I talked to so many other pros, and some are more open-minded than others, and that's cool. But I just figured, like, if you're in that state where you have no other option, and to me, the only other option would have been going the pharmaceutical route. And I just wasn't willing to accept that yet. I'm like, no, I haven't exhausted like every other
Yeah.
opportunity yet. So let me at least try this first. And because it worked, it's like now I want to talk about it. I want to share this with people, because I don't want people going down the pharmaceutical route, because I've spoken to those people and they don't even get the results they want. So it's kind of like one of those things where I guess it goes against the grain. Like you were saying, it's like, the more stories of people talking about it, then the more likely you are to be able to, okay, this is something that I'm willing to try, because it's such a simple thing. It really costs like pennies to do.
Yeah, there's no
I
downside,
mean,
so why not try
yeah,
it? Yeah.
exactly. And even if you have just like very minor symptoms like the IBS it mentions too, that could be something that just, if you've been struggling with that and nothing else helps, that can be the one thing that kind of changes the game for you. So yeah,
Were
it's
you
cool.
were you able to reintroduce any of these foods that were bothering you as things got better, like the eggs, or you still have issues with eggs and stuff?
So I will eat that stuff like here and there now. In my off season, what I did notice was, because I was like so happy and I just wanted to test the waters a bit and say, okay, what if I just start eating like normal? Like if I just eat like when I go out for dinner, what if I just eat like everything, not like pick and choose, like, oh, or what if I don't tell them I'm like gluten free? What if I don't tell them like, I'm allergic to stuff? And I didn't actually get any of those symptoms come back, but I did see that my level of inflammation was just continuing to rise, where I would hold on to more water, I'd be more body fat added on than I would want to. Digestion would slow down because I would notice that I would be bloated, I would be kind of like fuller more often. And so here and there, I would implement celery juice just to kind of maintain that. But I think it's like this is an anti-inflammatory like thing that we're doing with the celery juice, right? So if you're abusing yourself, then it can only do so much. You have to switch from that. And that's kind of why when I was in the mindset of I just got to get to the show, that's not necessarily really healing time. That's like
Yeah.
competition time. Like that's hardcore time. And then afterwards, then you have that, the quote unquote health phase. But I think that's the perfect time to start including these things, because then you can shift your mind from hardcore competition phase bodybuilder to now I heal my body, go back to loving yourself and all that kind of stuff.
Totally different mind shift. I'm like,
Different
I don't give a
mindset,
fuck
yeah.
what happens to me. So okay, I gotta heal. Um,
Exactly. Yeah.
you mentioned the orals. Obviously, those affect digestion. Do you think any other compounds, like, I mean, honestly, for like Tren, I feel like Tren just destroys my digestion. Do you have any issues with that at all?
I've never experienced that myself, but I have had people that will use Tran like yourself, and they'll say that they'll get like, like what kind of issues are you getting, like acid reflux or something like that?
Not so much acid reflux. It's more like you said, like immediately after something eating, my stomach's just ready to clear it out, get rid of it. I think a lot of it, maybe it's like the fight or flight response. It really
Yeah.
affects that a little bit.
Uh-huh. That's a good point. Yeah, 100%. I do believe that too, because especially when you're talking about things like trenbolone or thyroid hormone, things like that, those are definitely going to get you, pretty much any anabolic is shifting you in towards that fight or flight response to a certain degree. But yeah, 100%. Like you have to balance that out, because I'll notice that. And it's funny too, because when I started taking, Tren and T3, I see my metabolism speed up. I'm going through that food faster, having diarrhea. You think that's normal, but that's probably the first sign for you to start taking accountability, or just actually just considering, okay, like how far am I pushing that into fight or flight, and what am I doing to balance that out? Because that, like, I believe that is probably the biggest factor. And talking about, okay, well, someone with ulcerative colitis or Crohn's disease, IBS, for example, that's kind of the first step. Let's say like bloating, gas, digestive issues. We don't even know what they are yet. It's just something's going on. Then it progresses to IBS. Then it gets worse. It progresses to ulcerative colitis. Then it gets even worse. Now you have Crohn's disease. That's kind of like, it's like the progression of diabetes. It's like, okay, high blood sugar. Now you're pre-diabetic. Now you're diabetic. And it's like, well, guess what? You got to a certain point where you're not pulling back. So I think there's that, you have to manage that, right?
Yeah.
And with orals, I mean, that's one more stress that you're putting on your digestive system. So the way that it works, and it's awesome that I've read so many books about this I can finally share, is with the digestive system. When you're using the bathroom, this is what blew my mind, is when you go and you take a dump, okay, 80% of what comes out of you is you. It's not your food. 20% of it is your food. So that's mind-blowing, because people think I'm just pooping out all the food all the time. No, you're pooping out your bacteria, you're pooping out your intestines, literally, like what's part of you that you don't need
Bile.
anymore. Yes, you're getting rid of that, the microbiome. So how you replenish that is how you maintain your gut health. So celery juice is one of the best ways. Eating a diverse variety of vegetables and fruits, in my opinion, are crucial. Because that was another thing that I did, is just eating copious amounts of vegetables and fruits. I actually couldn't get enough of it. I think that's what made me realize how much I needed them, is that I could not eat enough. I was eating, basically just going to grocery stores and buying every fruit, every vegetable, making huge salads. And it was just like, man, this is so delicious. Can't get enough of this. And that was curing my body too. And then I was using these books to kind of pick the ones I needed. Okay, which ones do I want, wild blueberries for my brain. It's like I can put together the things that I almost like supplements, right?
Yeah,
Neurotropic,
you
right?
should put
So
together a little guide on this, man, since you've experienced so
coming,
much. Yeah,
it's
that'd be
coming,
great.
yeah.
Yeah, for
But
sure.
no, I mean that's
What vegetables were you doing? Because I know some people can have issues with certain vegetables too.
yeah. So I was doing. So let me try to think now. I was doing a lot of zucchini. Then I was doing some. I was doing squash. I was doing lots of tomatoes. I was doing some lettuce. I was doing peppers, mushrooms. Also, like I think I had almost like any vegetable you could get. Maybe not like broccoli. Maybe not like the super hard ones like
Super
that.
is. Yeah.
I was trying to get lots of different colors. Um, and
Any,
okra, another one. Yeah.
I'm Texan, so that's a staple for where I'm from.
Oh, is it?
Any oh yeah, fried though.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Fried with ranch usually.
Yeah,
Do you
yeah.
do any prebiotics or probiotics during the same time too? I mean, or like prebiotics from food, raw garlics, kimchi, that kind of stuff.
100%. So the way that I, understand probiotic as far as okay, you have your supplements and you have your like fermented foods and vegetables and stuff like that, prebiotic fibers from, certain vegetables. I prefer to consume a ton of sauerkraut, ton of
Yeah.
kimchi, organic sauerkraut, live, unpasteurized. That's my go-to for probiotics. And then I will take a probiotic supplement in a 3 week interval, basically. Take it for 3 weeks and then take a break from it for a while. What people I think don't really understand with probiotics is that you're basically populating your gut with that specific strain of bacteria. So if you're getting like I don't know, like 10 different strains, like a regular, probiotic supplement, it's got, bacto whatever, blah, 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 10 different ones. But your gut has like thousands, hundreds of thousands of different strains. So you keep putting the same one in. It's like those guys just keep populating themselves. And you have a whole bunch of these 10, and then you start to get less and less population of the other 900,000 you need, or however many, I don't even know. But that's the thing is you want to have more diversity, more population, but you can supplement here and there because you can throw like a soil-based probiotic in there. That's different. You can throw in like, like a, whatever, like Genestro, like whatever theirs are based off of. It's completely different. So just getting different strains, maybe throughout the course of a year, maybe use like 2 or 3 different probiotics here and there during times of sickness. For the rest of, your basically your normal eating schedule, you're incorporating these fruits and vegetables like pretty much all the time. You're incorporating your sauerkrauts, your kimchis, like whatever you like. Even kefir, people like that. I mean, I'm not a fan of the dairy stuff per se, but like, what's that drink that we drink all the time now? Forgetting, but
You talk about the probiotic.
probiotic drinks.
That's what I was
Yeah,
thinking. The Yakults is what I was thinking of. It's like the little like
yeah,
that's why it's good to get the varying ones you're saying because a lot of people just go get that little yogurt one and they throw that like, oh, I'm taken care of. That's all I need. When it is, like you said, important to get a variety of different ones in there from different sources. I have
100%.
people ask me all the time what to use the sauerkraut with, and I tell them pretty much everything. I think it goes with anything. What do you like to use your sauerkraut with? Because some people, I don't know why they have issues with it. I think it's awesome.
Yeah, I use it on 4 meals of the day. So meal 2, 3, 4, 5, basically. So meal 2 is a fish meal, meal 3 is a fish meal, meal 4 is a beef meal, and meal 5 is usually a beef meal right now, or bison. So, I love it on everything, man. Like I'll eat it by itself. I'll drink the juice straight out of the jar.
Oh
So
yeah, that's my part. And those are rice meals with those ones.
I don't do rice that much anymore. I go for more of the potato. I do cream of rice. I'll do a cream of rice, which is a black rice, versus a cream of rice that's a white rice.
Huh? I've never seen that.
So the black rice is again because I started hooking up with Grindstone Blends, which is a company that works with ulcerative colitis and Crohn's Canada. So their whole thing is they're trying to get the best not quality for sure, but I guess the most optimal gut healthy hot cereal. That's basically the goal is so it's obviously gluten free like all cream of rices are, but because it uses the black rice, you're getting more nutrition from that rice essentially. So
Yeah.
it's higher in antioxidants and higher in vitamins and minerals. So that's why I would choose that one. It's personally I really love that one. So Grindstone Blends is the one that I use. But yeah, definitely just choosing that over oats has been big. The oats will contain no matter what, because even when I was doing the gluten-free ones, it would contain zonulin. Just all oats contain zonulin, and that's
And
going
what
to
is
be a
that?
little bit of an issue. So zonulin is something that I haven't researched much myself, but my mentor BLP, Benoit Lapierre, he has brought zonulin to my attention, which other scientists have talked about as something that's like, it's like almost like similar to a gluten. It's not gluten, it's zonulin, but it acts similar to gluten as far as my understanding, as far as creating an inflammatory response goes
In the
for
same type
some
of
people.
products,
Uh,
the same type of food.
zonulin, I believe, it might be in certain grains, but I know it's in oats. And again, it's like gluten. It's like some people are totally fine with it, some
Yeah.
people aren't. But because I noticed that oatmeal was, giving me a little bit of an issue. Not to mention, there's probably definitely more insoluble fiber versus a cream of rice. So, I mean, that was one thing that I changed out. And then the other thing is just replacing the white rice with just white potatoes, which many people think that white potatoes are like similar to white rice, but they're not really at all, because white potatoes are packed with potassium and they have more fiber and just more nutrition in general. White rice is highly processed. You don't just pull it out of the ground, and you have to take it from that, whatever it was to begin with, process it way more versus the potato ground into your freaking plate, basically. So that's why I choose the potato. It's more of a whole food. It works better for my body. Some people think that they get bloated off potatoes. I mean, that's fine, man. Like everybody has different foods they need to choose from. That's where really getting an allergy test is going to, whether you believe it or not, like if it's a placebo effect, like, oh, I feel great when I eat this, might as well get a test and see. Because then it'll tell you, and there might be things that you're surprised that you shouldn't be eating that you love. Because your body and your gut, your brain, they have such a closely linked relationship, right? So when you start eating a lot of sugar, you start producing more bacteria in your gut that likes sugar and craves sugar, and then therefore tells your brain, hey, let's eat some sugar. So you do have to check yourself that sometimes when you really are like consuming a lot of one food, it might just be that your actual microbiome is just telling you to eat that food, even if it's an inflammatory or allergic responsive food. So just, yeah, good key points there for sure. But yeah, man, I don't even know where we're going with this, but it's a good conversation
it's just,
nonetheless.
it's just so important because I think like a lot of us like we'll be eating and like I'll start fucking like gagging. Like, okay, I gotta be hardcore and get it down. But I mean, there's a certain degree of that maybe. But yeah, I think maybe we need to look a little bit deeper. Okay, if my body's responding this way, maybe it's the food possibly. My body's telling me, hey. So yeah, that's really good. I appreciate that. And so for the rice, you're just doing that for the nutrition purpose, or did you have issues with the white rice digestively?
Yeah, no real issues with white rice, but what I did find was when I am, let's say, prepping for a show and I'm carving up in those last couple of weeks, if I have a potato meal, even pre-workout, I have a better pump and I have a better workout. And if I have white rice, I might not look as pumped. I might not be as hard. And I can explain why. I mean, it's pretty simple, really, because again, it's the potassium content, right? So most bodybuilders are putting a lot of sodium on their foods, and we want to have that sodium obviously in their fluid retention to a certain degree and all that kind of stuff. The sodium is one part of it, but we also have the potassium that creates that ratio, the potassium and sodium pump, the intra and extracellular fluid ratio. So I believe that when you have a higher potassium to sodium ratio, which is really only going to happen if you're eating like a lot of potassium rich foods, then you're going to influence having more of that intracellular fluid versus extracellular fluid, which is what happens when you have a higher ratio of sodium to potassium. So,
Take a note on that.
it's, yeah, it's
That's
one thing that I've played around with in terms of like peaking for shows. And again, going on stage, New York Pro, I had the white rice. I felt like I sweat, like that extracellular water was there versus when I went into Toronto, again, like in both times I had the colitis. So that's why I was able to experiment and figure out how to peak better. Was then when I had potato meals, sweet potato or white potato, I was kind of doing both and the cream of rice. Then on stage, I was much drier. I was harder, even though it's almost like you have a more conditioned look because that fluid pulls into the cell and it stays into the cell because that potassium holds it there versus the sodium, which when you have like a burger and fries and you go on stage, yeah, you're pumped to hell, but you're gonna sweat that extracellular fluid out, man. Right. So
uh,
it's that ratio that's really important to maintain that for sure.
yeah, and then white rice just goes through you so quick too. That's another part of it is you can flatten out real quick over that. The potatoes they'll stick around a little bit longer in your system digesting. Are you carving
100%.
up like a lot? Like if you're doing potatoes, like you have a like a carb number that you're hitting? Because I mean,
I
some
don't have a
people,
carb number. I don't even believe that a carb number even makes sense, because
yeah,
how do you even know? Like, how would you even make up a number? I think what I do with Dorian is we basically just increase it a little bit. Like, we increase a little bit and then we increase a little bit more and then we just see how we look. And every prep is different, especially because last time I mean, at some point I was just adding extra meals because I would wake up in the middle of the night and have like meal 7, then I would wake up again at like a weird time and have meal 8. And then the
as
meals
well.
I just basically was eating like every couple hours, like all the time going to the show because my weight literally was not changing.
Were you
Because
eating more since it was
I was
coming
eating
out more?
more. I would eat
Yeah,
more and more and more, but my weight wouldn't change at all. Just because it just kept going in and out, in and out, in and out. But
yeah,
managing that, because if I just stayed with that 6 meals, my weight was going down,
yeah, yeah.
right? So I was like, okay, but again, I didn't want to over carb or overeat or anything like that. So I just managing the weight. I was looking at the weight. Okay, I got to eat X amount of carbs, like the normal amount.
Yeah.
And then obviously, going closer to the show, maybe taper down the protein a little bit, whatever. But yeah, I feel like the overdoing of carbs is definitely, I mean, it's definitely what most people will do is they'll overdo the carbs, probably overdo the sodium, have a little bit of a spilling over effect. Yes, you're full, but maybe not the ideal look.
Yeah, I like the potassium thing. I hear Hani talking about the same thing too, as far as the food content, talking about how much people overlook potassium and how it helps get that 3D look. So
Oh yeah.
definitely, that's awesome. I appreciate it. Yeah, you definitely need to put out something because there's some really good info out there.